Hey guys, Zomfox here, and today is the video I talked about would be coming in the next couple days. The last one. This is going to be talking about the players that went from the USFL to the XFL in their XFL third iteration draft. So, to start right into it is to just mention really the main players who went. There are naturally more than these guys, but these are the only big names that truly went over. There were 6 guys in Channing Stribling, Kyle Slaughter, Luis Perez, Garrett McGinn, Sal Cannella, and Cam Hunt that all went to the XFL and were drafted. The Arlington Renegades already are starting off with a pretty good roster as they got Kyle Slaughter and Sal Cannella, the very, very solid duo of the Breakers, as Cannella was the best tight end in the league as he was the all-USFL tight end, even though he didn't actually, lead the league in any stats, which is definitely a good thing for them, especially considering that that team also got Garrett McGinn, who was also and Cam Hunt. Basically, they got literally 4 of the all-USFL offense players, which is, let's just say, that's pretty good. So they're already off to a very solid start on their team. Luis Perez, on the other hand, he would go to a different team, naturally. He would go to the Las Vegas Vipers, as that's where he ended up getting drafted. And then the last guy in Channing Stribling, he ended up getting drafted to the St. Louis Battlehawks. So overall, those are really where the guys went. So basically, in theory, at least to me, it's pretty obvious which team should be the automatic favorite since they got, 4 of the all-USFL players last year. But those are really the main guys that went from the USFL to the XFL. Now, there's a lot that you can read into this about why they did, how they did. Essentially, I'm pretty sure there's some sort of clause in the contract the USFL guys signed or some loophole, because the idea was that they could keep anyone even if they signed the NFL. There was some loophole they didn't get. But in terms of the actual idea of what this means, it really depends how far in you want to read into it. But really, I don't think there's a lot to read into it, except for the fact of just purely money-wise, as the USFL was supposed to have made a CBA that I don't think has been done yet, though it was supposed to potentially increase pay. Because to put it simply, money is really probably 80% of the reason these guys went to the good old XFL, as I feel like the guys that it's just they didn't make it on an NFL roster, so they're not getting paid from that, so they'd rather get more money. To put it simply, the XFL does pay more as of right now. The XFL players earn $5,000 a week versus the USFL's $4,500 a week, and that's for active rosters. Then inactive players get $1,500, whereas the USFL, it doesn't really say that. The USFL practice squad players make $1,500 a week. The XFL, that hasn't been announced yet, I believe. Then in terms of training camp rosters, XFL guys make $800 a week, whereas USFL guys make $600 a week. So right there, the XFL is already beating the USFL in terms of money by a pretty substantial amount. And then for the bonuses, every win, XFL players earn $1,000, whereas the USFL, it's $850 per victory. Now, we don't know for sure about the playoff incentives and stuff like that, as the USFL, the Stallions players were awarded $10,000 each for the victory. But the one thing that is a big deal, aside from just how many players are on the roster, is the fact that in the USFL season, during training camp, all players stayed for free in the hotels, but during the regular season, the USFL only picked up half the bill, so USFL players had to spend $75 per night hotel room, or they rented homes and stuff like that in that area. And then during the playoffs, the USFL paid for it. But the fact that during the whole regular season, which was naturally 3 months pretty much, that means for 2.5 months, which is over 60 days, they're paying $75 a night. That adds up really fast. And that monetary value right there was something that's in the CBA they were talking about, because that's really the huge killer. Because that's a lot of money you're losing, especially if you're going to be making less than the other league, because the XFL is going to be providing it for everyone. And that's the one thing that's really different about it. So the XFL, money-wise, does have that advantage. Naturally, if the CBA finally gets done, if it hasn't already, it's just behind closed doors, that could change. But right now, that's the biggest flaw. Now, in terms of other reasons guys would go to the XFL over the USFL, is just due to trying to get to the NFL. The XFL season ends in April, late April, early May. Whereas the USFL season doesn't end till July. So the fact is, that's 2 more months for your body to rest up to get ready for the NFL season and training camp and stuff like that. Whereas these guys that went from the USFL straight to the NFL, yes, that shows a huge commitment for especially the guys who made it, the Cavante Turpins, now the Mitch Fabronis. But it's a lot easier to make it when you haven't played in 4 months versus 2 months, because it's just your body has a lot less wear and tear. Now, I will say, who knows, I really do feel like there's going to be a couple, ultra tryhards that somehow play in both leagues this year. Or next year, I guess. I really do feel that way, because it just seems that would be so funny and so cool if that happens. But we don't know. But in terms of what it means for the USFL and XFL, all it really says to me is that the USFL's biggest problem is the money towards the players. Now you can take that in multiple different ways. You can take that as it's a negative to the XFL because they're spending even more money than the USFL was by a long shot. They're paying for places in 8 different cities versus 1. They're paying their players far more than the USFL was paying it in terms of, really that far more is mainly due to the hotels and stuff. But they're also paying more players because their rosters are a bit bigger. So in that regard, it's not like I think that they're gonna fail, but but if either league is going to end up getting shut down next year, it won't be the USFL. It will be the XFL. That's the only flaw with them at this moment that I could see actually happening, is that they just spend too much money because they already are spending way more than the USFL. As Brian Woods and his boys have basically made it very clear, they're taking the slow and steady approach versus the XFLs. Let's just go all in. Now, which side works, or if they both work, we don't know. There's people that think that it can't work with 2 spring leagues. People think it can work. We don't know for sure. But in terms of these players going from the USL to the XFL, what it really is just really about the money and less to an extent of the time to get back to the NFL. Just because the money is definitely a huge thing. And it's not like these are the type of guys who, are making millions of dollars in the NFL. So this money that they're getting, while it is usually more than the average person's yearly salary, it's more than $40,000 a year because they're getting $50,000 in just, a couple months. But for an athlete, especially compared to, any other league, it's a lot less than those other leagues. But naturally, this is one of the things where we'll see. I mean, you can look into this as far else as you want, but I really do feel it's just about the money. Because I feel like if you want to look into it as far as you can, it looks bad for the USFL because guys are choosing the XFL, but it looks bad for the XFL because they're taking guys from the USFL saying that the USFL is better talent. It's just, don't read too far into it. Just read the surface level in this case, and the surface level is the money. As, everyone money is what makes the world turn and stuff like that. And it is very clear that money is the huge thing for this. So, yeah. This has been Zomfox. If you enjoyed this content or want to be notified as soon as I upload any videos, make sure to subscribe and hit the bell. And as always, have a great night.